Hi, everybody. Good morning. It's Dana Markson from Rockstar Practice and Mind Soother Therapy Center here for a Coping Skills Tool Belt workshop series for mental health professionals. It is our honor to bring you these workshop series, and we have a lovely special guest today. I'm very excited to introduce her to you, and I'm going to be learning along with you today because I am not too familiar with this topic. Just a few things about housekeeping. Please turn off your cell phones, put away anything that might be distracting. This time is for you, the therapist. This is not a clinical training. These are coping skills for you as people so that you can enrich your life, you can calm down, manage anxiety, and so that you can create a greater space for your clients. So it is my pleasure to introduce to you today Jamie Wasserman. Jamie is a licensed clinical social worker and a doctorate in social work for 30 years, and her practice is in Montclair, and she is going to be bringing this very unique topic to you today. And so it is my distinct pleasure to introduce to you Jamie Wasserman. Take it away, Jamie.
Thank you very much. Should I share my screen now?
Sure.
Okay, so thank you very much for attending. I'm really looking forward to talking to you all about this. Wait a sec. Okay, about this topic. Sorry, I'm just doing my little.
Okay, get yourself set up.
Yeah.
Take a moment. You can go play from the start on the left.
Whoop, 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 whoop. Okay, so I'm going to start with this presentation with a little psycho-ed, just because the concept of locus of control is not as familiar in private practice settings or even really in psychology settings as I personally think it should be. I think it's a really, really useful tool and useful thing to understand. So I'm just going to run through a history of how did we get this concept, where did it come from? So the history of locus of control started after World War II, after the Nuremberg trials, when a bunch of psychologists and social scientists asked the question, how did that happen? Like, let's just assume that all people aren't bad. How did good people agree to do bad things? Because that's a really important human condition question that we need to ask. So Stanley Milgram, who probably most of you have heard about, and if not, very interesting experiment that he did an experiment where he tried to understand how obedient are people. So he did an experiment where he put a person behind a curtain that was supposedly hooked up to electrodes, and another person asking that person questions, and an experimenter who was wearing a white coat asking the questions also. So the experimenter would say, okay, ask the person a question. When the person got the question wrong, the person who was doing the experiment was required to give them an electric shock. What they discovered was that 80% of people are willing to shock a stranger when they're told to by a person in a white coat who seems like an authority. And 65% of those people would actually shock that stranger to death, like beyond where they could even know they were still okay. So that was a really shocking understanding. And because of that experiment, it was so upsetting to the people who were actually the subjects of the experiment. The IRB boards came into practice. They started monitoring experiments so that experimenters weren't allowed to do things like that again. Now, interestingly, we thought, okay, that must have been a fluke. How could this have been? They've done that experiment several times at that time in the 1960s. But a couple of years ago, they repeated that experiment in Poland and they got the exact same results. So really, the human condition is very obedient when they're told to do things. So there's a point to this. So then in 1964, Julian Rotter came up with the concept of locus of control, and what he understood was that we place the control of our lives often in the hands of others. We don't keep it inside of our own self. And that's how people become obedient and they do things that they don't necessarily feel they would do in other circumstances. So the locus of control, the definition of it is our sense of control makes us who we are, and it is where we perceive the control to be located in our life. So if we're externally located, we believe that life's events and experiences, whether good or bad, are mostly caused by forces outside of our control. And such as the environment, people or higher power, luck, anything that you can hear people say that, like, God willing, this will happen. Those are sorts of externally located expressions. And the basic belief is that things happen to you, things happen to us. The internal locus of control is a belief that your life's events and experiences, whether good or bad, are highly influenced by your own skills, your own attitudes, your own preparations, your own abilities, and that you make things happen. So Rotter came up with this concept. And one experiment that was very interesting that was done accidentally, there was a psychiatric hospital where they had people who were hopeless. They were mute. They felt that they were chronic psychiatric patients. They renovated the floor. So they moved all of those patients up to another floor where they were less chronic. They had more control over their life. They were able to make decisions for themselves. They were able to make decisions for what they ate and what they did during the day. They could sign up for activities. And one of the women who was on the bottom floor stopped being mute, started engaging with people. And after the floor was renovated, even though she had made progress, they put her back down to the bottom floor. And within 2 days, she died. And so they discovered that having control over your life has a lot to do with your well-being. So over the course of time, since that concept was understood, our locus of control, where we place it, either internal or external, there's been a lot of research done. At this moment, most of the locus of control work and most of the locus of control strategies that are taught to patients are in cancer treatment and the medical model, because they've come to understand that patients who take control and feel more in control of their treatment and of their healing do much better. And they feel better, they have better attitudes, they have better compliance. So they teach them locus of control strategies. We have some of this buried in some of our DBT and CBT work, for sure, when it comes to what can you control, what can't you, and stuff like that. But the locus of control plan can be incredibly helpful to us when we're feeling anxious about something, because when we're feeling externally located, we have anxiety. There's a direct link between feeling externally located and anxiety. So externals have more anxiety, are more compliant, more dependent on others. They have lower levels of psychological adjustment, lower levels to deal with health. They're more at risk to compromise their own morals and values, whereas internals have better academic achievement, better interpersonal relations, greater effort to learn, positive attitudes towards change, less personal compromise, and less anxiety and depression. So externally located people experience themselves through the minds of others and also through the impact of things happening. One of the reasons I'm excited to do this now at this time is if we've ever been in an externally located place on our planet, it's now. We are at the mercy of a pandemic that we don't really understand. And I don't know about you guys, but I certainly have had much higher levels of anxiety at certain times based on trying to figure out what to do that's the right thing to do during this time to stay safe. So there's an externally locating event going on, and to the extent that we're internally or externally located about that event, we feel better, even if we're in the same situation that we were in before. So we'll go through the exercise in a bit of how to go from being externally located to internally located. So locus of control and anxiety. If you're feeling externally located, you might say things like, well, I hope this goes well. I hope this ends soon. I wonder what they're thinking. Like if you think about what people are thinking of you, I wonder what they're looking for, like doing a presentation, being externally located in the community of people watching, like what would they like me to say? You lose a bit of your power. You lose a bit of your authority and a bit of your confidence when you're externally located. So these are just some of the things that people might say when they're externally located. So the other thing about locus of control, which I think is interesting, and I'd love you all to think about your own self and your own experience during this time, is it's very domain specific. So we are internally located in some areas and we're externally located in others, the very same person at the very same time. So I like to think of our locus of control as we're a target. And we have a relationship with ourselves, and some people have a very strong relationship with themselves and they feel very internally located with themselves. One of the things that's happening during this pandemic, because we're so isolated, we've lost a lot of our social supports. And we've lost a lot of the things that we do that create well being or create community for us. And that's an opportunity for us to take a look at what is my relationship with myself like? Like, how are you experiencing? I'm sure most of you, certainly in New Jersey, I know, are working online now. We're no longer in our offices in 3 dimensions. What is that like for you? How do you feel? Do you feel confident? Do you feel less confident? And then the next level is our inner circle. How do we feel within relation to our children and to our spouses and to the people that are in that inner circle with us? Do we feel like we have power and that we have a voice, or do we feel more externally located in those people where we anticipate what they need, we maybe over deliver things, we over give, and then we feel drained? And then the next circles out are our work and our friends and our acquaintances and strangers. And if you think about your own life and you think, where am I more internally or externally located, it's often in one of these domains. And it's also often just very situationally specific. Like you might find that when you're alone and you're internally located for the most part, but when you're with people, you get a little more externally located in what they're thinking or what they want, and you get a little anxiety. For many of our clients, being externally located can cause great amounts of anxiety, and it can be a very helpful tool to think about that and to run them through the protocol of toggling back and forth from internal to external locus of control. So the applications are anxiety management, just self-knowledge. What do I really feel about that? I know that sometimes we lose track of what we think when we're talking to someone who has a lot of strong opinions. We can get influenced by that person and think those opinions might be ours too. It's good for goal setting when we have a really big goal we want to set, like maybe some of you at this time, because I know I have a lot more time on my hands. You might have more time on your hands and think, you know what, I'm going to write that book I want to write, or I'm going to knit a sweater, or I'm going to do something that I've always wanted to do and I have time to do. And it feels like this big goal, and it might feel overwhelming. It might feel, how do I get that goal? How do I do that? It's a good application for that too. It's good for mental health management, physical health, unwanted consensual sex, which is an area I work in, but it has nothing to do with us right now, or drugs and alcohol. People get externally located in those things and can't control them. So before I start on understanding how to change from external to internal, does anyone have any questions or comments about just the concept generally speaking? I can't see the chat.
I can read the questions to you if they come up.
Okay. No questions?
Give it 1 second to register. Is internal better than external? Somebody asks.
Thank you. That's a good question. Yes, it is. So being internally located is much better than being externally located, because you are actually living your own life. You're actually designing your own goals. You're designing your own responses. You feel that you can accomplish things, that you can get things done. And if you're feeling externally located, you feel a little at loose ends and you can feel anxious about not being able to get things done. So I don't know if anyone feels that they understand this concept and can share where they possibly might be externally located, that would be very helpful too. I know that sometimes when I'm feeling externally located, if I'm feeling anxious about an event, like, you have to go to a dinner party or you have to present at a conference, or if I'm teaching one of the classes that I teach, if I'm not feeling super confident about it, I start worrying about what I'm going to wear. And that's when I know I'm externally located. When I'm starting to think about what should I wear, I'm actually imagining myself in the minds of other people. And so you can't imagine yourself in the minds of other people because you never have any idea what people are actually thinking. And so it is a very flawed strategy. And so when you start feeling things like that, like concern about what other people are thinking, concern about what other people are feeling not confident that you can get something done, that's usually a tell that you're feeling a little externally located and you should do the work to get internally located.
There's a few more quick questions. I'm not
Sure.
sure how many you want to take. The one that my question actually was, are you born with your locus of control, or does it change or develop?
Thank you. That's an excellent question too. Your locus of control changes and develops, and it is very dependent on the kinds of experiences that you have growing up. So, like most things. So, for instance, just to throw out an extreme case, people with narcissistic parents tend to be more externally located because in order to survive a narcissistic parent, you need to know what's in their mind. You actually do need to read their mind so that you can avoid catastrophic events. And so people with narcissistic parents tend to naturally be more externally located as a style. People who are very strong-willed tend to want people to be externally located in them. Advertising works because we get externally located in whatever we're seeing in the advertisement, right? We see, a beautiful home and we're like, oh, I want that home. Do you want that home? You don't even know. You think it before you even really know if that's what you want or not. And so it does develop. You're not born with it. It's not a aptitude or a character trait. It's a reaction to your environment. Yeah.
Okay, we'll move on. And then as more questions arise, when we take another break, I can read more to you.
Okay. Did anyone share where they might feel that they get externally located?
They did not. If anyone wants to
Okay.
take a minute to share now, maybe at the next break, we can go back and explore that.
Okay. So this is how you change it. I have these little marks here. Can you see those green marks? I'm not sure why they're there. So when you're changing your locus of control, the rule of thumb is you can't control everything, but you can control something. So the way to change when we feel externally located is to create a 3-level internal locus of control plan. And we basically start that plan by increasing our mindfulness about where the power is placed and where there are compromises that are self-destructive. So we often place the power of our lives either in our own hands or in the hands of others, or for instance, let's just use COVID for an example. We might feel very externally located and frightened about this disease or frightened about catching it. And so building an internally locating plan is we have 3 levels of goals in any of these things. The first one is reachable, very reachable. So if you're feeling anxious and you're feeling like, oh, I just feel overwhelmed, like how am I going to get my practice back to where it was, maybe is one of the concerns people might be having. Or how am I going to re-enter my office space if people aren't working in their office yet safely? Or how am I going to, continue working online and get insurance if people insist you go back. Like there's all these questions that are very much like we're in the hands of systems and other people and other considerations. And so the first goal that we have to create is very reachable. So it requires effort, but it feels possible. So for instance, in the COVID example, just because we're all living through that together, one of the ways to stay safe is to wear a mask, wash your hands, never touch your face, stay 6 feet from people. So if you do that, which is a very reachable goal, it requires effort of we're not always, it's not so simple all the time. We can feel like, okay, I'm a little less anxious. I have a little more control over this. I can reach that goal. And then a stretch goal is you need to take a risk or learn something new. So I would need to, in COVID, understand who's getting this disease, how are they getting it, what are the treatments like, stay on top of that, always have the information so that if you do get it or if someone that you love gets it, know what to do and who to call and this kind of thing. Then the next thing is a Hail Mary goal. Now in the COVID example, unless you're doing research and figuring out, we might not have a Hail Mary goal for COVID, but we might. So some people I know, maybe not necessarily in response to COVID per se, but in response to what's happening and we don't know the end of it, are giving up their office. They're no longer paying rent. They're giving up their full-time office. They're going online full-time. And that feels like much more in control for them than waiting to see what's going to happen and paying rent that they don't necessarily know when they're going to be going back to their office, or they don't know when they're going to feel comfortable going back to their office. So that would be a very strong and very anti-anxiety goal because it's decisive, you made the decision, and there's no longer that noise in your head with those questions that might make you feel very anxious. So given that, does anyone have any sort of response or feelings like, oh yeah, this makes sense, or I understand that about me? Does it feel just foreign? Like, how do people feel about this concept generally?
Everybody take a second, whoever wants to share, to just put a line in the chat about how this is feeling for you so far. We are going to be doing some practice ourselves that you'll be leading us in, right, Jamie?
Mm-hmm. We're going to create our own internally located plan. So everybody needs to identify where might you feel externally located. And it can be anywhere. It can be something that you feel anxiety about. It can be, I'm wanting to lose weight. I want to exercise more. I want to stop watching television all the time. So it would be, I can come up with examples. It would be nice if somebody had an example from the group, just because it's more interesting than my examples possibly that are just made up. So if anybody can think of a place they might feel externally located,
So as an example, it would be a place where you're worried about what other people might think of you,
mm-hmm.
or doing the right thing. How will this appear anytime you're thinking about optics? What will this look like to
Mm-hmm.
others? There are a few comments. People said it makes sense, it's reasonable. I feel some people have a sense of both, which I think is what you're saying. We
Yes.
are both.
Yeah, we all do. We all have a sense of both, right?
Someone said this is very reassuring. It's difficult with mental health issues. However, overall, I rely on this skill every day.
Mm-hmm.
Yes, I think this is going to be very interesting to me to see how we can marry this theory, this idea, with our own mental health and our own management of the current time.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm. And that's why if no one came up with an idea, I can just use an example that
People wrote a few things. I'm not sure if they fit for you.
mm-hmm.
Raising a young family and working full time, not enough time in the day to get things done, feel externally located a lot, aka not in control.
Mm-hmm.
And then someone else wrote, I find it difficult trying to manage with being home fully and working with 4 children.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
So maybe one of those could work.
Yeah. So I think that why don't we take I'll try to combine them. The feeling not in control. That's a good one because I think that's a general one that can also apply to having 4 children or having demands placed on your time and you don't have enough time for those demands, right? That's a very common place for us to feel overwhelmed and externally located. So the first thing we do when we're building an internally located plan is we become mindful of where we're externally located. So those things are all very helpful. You feel like, oh my God, this is overwhelming. I have 4 children. I have no time. This is chaos. Or I never feel in control. This situation is out of my control, which it is. So the first thing we do is we build reachable goals for ourselves that we can accomplish every single day. So in terms of just feeling out of control in the world, you might not pick a goal that even has anything to do with the world. You might not have picked a goal, if it's worrying about the pandemic, worrying about the economics. Those things we can ruminate over and we can really think like, oh my goodness, how is this world ever going to come back? We don't know what's going to happen, actually. We have no idea. So it doesn't make sense for us to spend a lot of time thinking about that because it's unknown. So it's a great place for us to have ruminating anxiety. So especially if you read paper, the paper is designed to have you feel externally located so you continue reading it. There's been studies done that if they use certain words in headlines, they can keep people engaged. But if you say something calming, people go away and do something else. So the important thing to do in our locus of control plan is to get up every morning and have a set of reachable goals. A set of reachable goals against your Hail Mary goal. So in feeling out of control of everything, we would say, okay, pick something you are in control of. Pick something that you can do, that you can feel successful at, that is doable and within your reach. So you might feel out of control, but your closet's a mess. Cleaning your closet gives you a sense of, okay, I did that. I did that thing. I took control of something that felt out of control. If you have 4 children and you're supposed to do school with them or keep them entertained, you might have little tiny incremental reachable goals that you set up for yourself that are actually reachable. So a completely organized, completely managed household is your Hail Mary goal. And we often start our day thinking of our Hail Mary goal, the goal that is the ideal state that we want to reach. And then we always feel like failures because we never reach that ideal state. We reach that ideal state from incrementally doing little reachable goals and going along moment by moment, piece by piece. So a reachable goal with kids might be, okay, today I'm going to eat lunch with them. That my contribution, I have to work, I have these 4 kids, I'm just going to take a break at lunch and I'm going to have them all sit down, have lunch together, make sure we do whatever, and then that's going to be my goal for today for managing the chaos of my family in this situation. And then you'll feel like, okay, I did that. That felt successful. That felt less overwhelming. If raising kids, you had that the locus of control plan for kids, for raising kids, is incredibly important. That's a whole nother lecture series because raising internally located kids and having an internally located parenting plan is incredibly important. And you need to have reachable goals throughout their entire development that are sound. And often we want our kids to be a lot of things at the same time. And then we always feel like we're failing. Instead of saying, okay, for this 6-month period, I'm only going to work on helping my kid and making sure they're polite. This is the time we're just going to talk about communication. How polite are they? I'm not going to worry if their room's a mess. I'm not going to worry if they match their pants and their shirt. And you pick things that seem important. You focus on those things, and then they master those things, and you master those things, and you feel a sense of success. So the thing about the reachable goals, even in whatever area, is they're little incremental things you can do every single day to feel like you've successfully accomplished something. Because that feeling gets into your system, and then you understand, oh, I feel successful if I clean the kitchen. I feel successful if I empty the dishwasher. We often have a lot of things in our mind that we want to have done. We make them as orders, or we make them as requirements. We don't get them done, and then we feel like failures. And that's how we're not kind to ourselves. And that's how we leave ourselves externally located in all kinds of areas. Instead of saying, this today, my house is going to be a mess. I'm not doing anything in my house today, but I am going to do this. I am going to take my kids on a walk. And that's going to be what I do today. So when I see the house a mess, I'm not worrying about that. That wasn't on my goal list. That wasn't what I was trying to do. If I get to it, even better. That's great for me. But I'm not going to use that as a feeling of being out of control, because I wasn't trying to actually control that element. So does that make sense for the reachable? So I would like everyone just to think about your own life, pick a goal that you feel like, this is important to me. I want to do this thing, even if I want to be calmer, right? I want to be a calmer person. I want to have more well-being. I want to be more in the moment. That requires every single day taking a moment, sitting with yourself, probably doing a little bit of a meditation practice, a mindfulness practice, making sure that when things happen, you don't get too upset. If you do get upset, bringing yourself back down to not being upset. Like, I like using 0 to 10. Are you a 0 or a 10? Once you go above a 5, you need to get back down. And sometimes we let ourselves get to 10 and we don't even realize it. And then we're like, oh my gosh, I'm so upset. And we're not mindfully keeping our system calm. So that would be a reachable goal, right? A reachable goal is every day taking a moment, sitting with yourself, making yourself calm. And these things are endless, right? Whatever the outside goal is, the reachable goals are always in process with the ideal state at the end. So the next level, and I'll go through this, is our stretch goal. So our stretch goal requires a new skill or implementing new learning, or feels a little uncomfortable or feels a little stressful. So, in terms of feeling in control of your life, it feels more, we feel more empowered when we master things. That's just a fact of how people are. And when we're externally located, we tend not to feel that we are capable of a lot of mastery. So if you feel out of control of everything, it's a very good idea to think of something you want to master. You want to learn to bake bread. It doesn't have to be profound. It doesn't have to be something that is going to benefit humanity. I think one of the problems with being therapists and social workers is we're trying to heal the world. And that's such a big ask. That's such a huge burden. And sometimes we just have to bake a nice loaf of bread, or make a sweater, or plant your garden, right? Do something that's really just for you, where you're trying to master a new skill or ability that feels very personal and feels very important to you, but not necessarily important to anyone else. And so that's a nice locus of control goal also, is something that's just really personal. And the more you do that, the more you feel like, oh, I can actually do things. I actually learned how to prune my unruly bushes. I looked it up. I learned this new skill. I went to the hardware store and bought what I needed to buy. And I watched a YouTube video, and now my garden looks better. And you feel like, oh, I have some skills. I have some abilities I didn't have before. And that's the stretch goal, right? And so you have your goals that are very reachable, and then you pick some stretch goals too, in order to be stretching your mastery, stretching your empowerment. And then the last goal is the Hail Mary goal, which is the dream result. So the dream result of feeling not out of control all the time is feeling in control most of the time, right? It's impossible to feel in control all of the time. But for that example of I feeling out of control all the time, it would be the stretch goal, I would say, for that one would be really, or the Hail Mary would be really learning how to toggle back and forth from being externally to internally located. So when you feel like, oh, everything's out of control, you build the mental capacity and the insight and the skills to say, that's me feeling externally located. What can I control? What, let me just change my whole mindset. What can I do? What can I accomplish? What can I get done? And then the difference between the world being out of control and us being out of control, it kind of separates itself. So we feel in control in an out of control world. And I think that's the most we can do, right? The most we can do is feel like, I may not be in control of what's going on in the world right now, but I am in control of me. And I am in control of my abilities to calm myself down and to set goals for myself and to get things done. So if you have 4 kids, I mean, we'd need more details. You would set, maybe the oldest kid to do some things with the younger kid. I'm sure whoever has this problem has thought about a lot of these things. And then you let go of it and you say, okay, the goal now is, there's no help. There's no schools, there's no camps, they're in the house. The goal is everyone at the end of the day is still alive. That's it. That's my goal. That's my Hail Mary goal is everyone is just still alive. That's kind of reachable. You could probably do that. And you would feel good. Like, okay, I'm not trying to teach somebody some extreme math concepts. I don't think that's, unless you're a great mathematician. You have to set your expectations according to reality in order to stay internally located. And that is one of the other really important skills in setting these goals is, how is my relationship to reality? And right now, we're all in a very compromised position, and we have to be accepting of that. And then within that compromising position, what can we do so that we can be kind to ourselves? So that is how you set up a internally located plan. When you feel out of control, you find something you can control. You start with very reachable. Let me go back to that. It's very simple, but it's very profound. You start with something very reachable, then you move on to something that's a stretch, and then you develop a new skill or develop a new ability, and then you have an end goal, which might be either a product that you create or even an attitude, a way of experiencing yourself in the world. That could be your Hail Mary. My Hail Mary is not to feel anxious all the time. It's not to feel like I can't do anything about the world. So I'm going to take myself and I'm going to create every single day goals that make me feel more in control of my environment, more in control of what I'm doing. And eventually you'll realize, wow, I don't feel like I did before. I don't feel as out of control. I don't feel as anxious as I did before. But it's very easy to get externally located and not even realize it's happening. It's just a state we're used to experiencing. We can get very comfortable in that state and just feel like chickens with their head cut off, running around going, oh my goodness, what am I going to do? That's when you know you're externally located. So that would be...
I have a few questions, and I'm wondering if other people have questions as well. Can we pause one moment for some questions?
Yes, please.
So I have several, but the first thing is, when we're thinking about sort of switching from external to internal and creating our plan, is the 3-tiered plan for one goal, one end goal? For example, I would like to create a group practice. I want to, like, sort of your dream externally, or is it your dream internally? Or could it be either? In other words, it could be both.
It can be either. Yeah. So for that, if that's a real goal of yours, you want to start a group practice. So you want to have people working for you, correct?
Right.
Right. So there's obvious steps, right? Like, first you have to identify, what is your practice about? What's it, you can create the look and feel. You can create the culture you want to create. That you can do completely by yourself. Get a very good sense of, what is this? Is it going to be very formal? Is it going to be informal? Am I going to have people who work across the spectrum of issues, or am I going to focus it on one thing? And then that's very reachable. You can do that sitting alone in your house, right? You can create that whole thing, get that vision going. Once you have that vision, you will then find like-minded people who want to participate in that vision, because you can express that vision very clearly. And so then now you're one step greater. Now you have found the people who are going to participate in your vision that you were able to express so clearly. And one of the things that is often true is, if we put a scrambled vision into the world, we get a scrambled result. So a scrambled vision would be, I want to practice, but I'd be lucky if people worked for me, so I'll just take what I can get. And then you end up with a take what you can get practice. And I have seen in 30 years of practice that people with profound clarity get a profoundly clear result. And people with a scrambled idea get a scrambled result. And it feels a little like magic to me when I see it happen. But the more clear people are on their internally located plan, the more successful they are at achieving that plan. I'm not sure if everyone else has experienced that also, but it's just an incredibly important step, is to have that profound internal clarity. So if someone says, oh, I would like to introduce, I want to be in your group practice, I want to bring massage therapy to it. And you're like, you know what? I don't actually have massage therapists in my practice, but thank you very much. Because you've already done the work, instead of getting a more scrambled understanding of, oh, I'll just let anyone come in, which an externally located person might do because they feel I'm not good enough, I'm not strong enough, I don't have the right. I hear a lot of people speak like that. Well, who am I to make such a clear vision? It's like, if not you, who? Of course, you're the one that has to make the clear vision. So does that make sense?
Yeah, that's a great answer. I have one more question that's very relevant to today. And this may be different depending on what state the attendees of this workshop are in now. But in New Jersey, we are following our plan to potentially return to our offices someday. And I'm sure every state has their own. And I'm just wondering, how can we apply locus of control to our plans for going back, if we are even in fact going back into our offices? Is there a way we can sort of use this to create a plan for ourselves? How would it help us?
Yes, I think that's a great question. So being internally located in this particular situation that you're speaking of, and in all situations, is really having self-knowledge. And so one of the things that is occurring now as people go back into their offices, people have a general sense of comfort with that, right? Some people are super comfortable with it. They're like, if I get this, I'll be fine. It's not a big deal. Are they right? We don't know. We don't have enough data, but that's their feeling. So that's good for them. They go in without anxiety. And some of us feel more like, you know what? I really want to wait 6 months. I really want to wait 8 months before I put myself in a public setting, because I'm not sure that I'm comfortable with that. And the end result of catching this is really what I'm trying to avoid. I'm not okay with catching this. So I'm going to, from a very internally located place, not go back. And so as we make those incremental decisions to participate in a system that is occurring outside of us, right? We're not saying, I want to go back. The state is saying, you can come back. That doesn't mean you have to go back, right? You guys, we all can negotiate with our clients. We all can negotiate our own terms. But to go back before you're ready, because you don't feel safe, you don't feel confident that we have enough knowledge to keep ourselves safe, is being externally located in responding to pressure from an outside source that is compromising your own sense of well-being, and then you'll have anxiety. So I think the most important thing to do as all of this starts happening is know yourself, and don't be apologetic for who you are. Don't be ashamed if you say, you know what, I'm not going back to my office, even though I can, and even though other people are. It's not my comfort zone. It'll make me anxious. I'm not confident we have enough information, so I'm going to stay working on the computer, working on Zoom. And people will either say, That's great. I respect that. Or they'll say, I don't respect that. I need to see someone in person. And then they can go find someone in person. But it's important for us to know ourselves, what we're comfortable with, and what's going to keep us at night. One of the things I am sleeping at night. One of the things I've noticed in this, even in the last couple of weeks, as more, gatherings are happening, people are going to gatherings because they're happening, and then they're coming home and having major anxiety because they go over it in their mind. They're like, oh my God, someone walked up to me. They weren't 6 feet apart. They didn't have a mask. What did I do? You don't have to go to a gathering just because you've been invited to a gathering, and you can go to a gathering. We have to keep our own self comfortable with our own minds from an internally located place, and no one can tell you you're wrong. Someone might have a different opinion, and they might want to use that opinion to encourage you to come back to the office. But it's really important for us to know, what do I need to do for me? What makes me comfortable? What can I live with? And what will I not have anxiety thinking about after I do this action, if this action is really about pleasing somebody else? Does that make sense?
Yeah, I would love for everyone to really throw themselves in fully right now and commit to a few reachable goals that you will maybe pay attention to today or tomorrow. So I think you're offering us an invitation to
Yes,
think of the end
absolutely.
result and then create the locus of control plan. Would be, what are my reachable goals? What is my stretch? And what is my Hail Mary? And so anybody that wants to, please right now, put your one reachable goal in the chat. Because I think unless you say it out loud and write it down, it's an idea, it's a thought, it's not a goal. Actually, are you done with your PowerPoint, Jamie?
I am. I have
So
one
just
more.
maybe just,
Yeah, so here's the exercise.
yes,
Yeah.
let's go through that. And
So,
then as we're doing that, everyone just type in the chat what your commitment is going to be.
yeah. So you're going to find an area in your life where you're externally located. We all know where that might be. And then pay attention to your tell, right? So your tell is that feeling that you have where, because sometimes you're like, I don't know where I'm externally located. It's that feeling you have where you become self-conscious, or you become uncomfortable when you think about it. Like my tell is always, what am I going to wear? When I really don't worry about that all that often, but when I am worried about it, I know I'm in an externally located state, and I'm worried about my audience, or I'm worried about where I'm going to go. That's just me. So what is the goal you would like to accomplish? Identify that. Like starting your practice, starting a group practice, that's a great one. That's a great goal. And I always like to say, you may as well make it a big goal, because if you're going to accomplish something, you may as well accomplish something great, because you're going to do the same amount of work to accomplish something small as to end world hunger. It's same amount of work. So, but it's up to you how ambitious you feel. And then what are the steps to get there? Identify all of the steps, right? Some of them will be, find out what the rules are for group practice. How do you bill? What kinds of degrees do people need to work under you? These kinds of things. Those are really important, all the details. And then find out which steps are reachable on a day-to-day basis. Identify your reachable steps, identify your reachable goals, right? Like, my reachable goal is, I feel overwhelmed by everything. I'm going to meditate every day. I'm going to try that tool. I'm going to be mindful every single day, and I'm going to feel myself. I'm going to feel inside my body. I'm going to feel my own mind, my own self, so that I'm not pulled into this chaotic world right now. I'm going to be the eye of the storm. I'm not going to be in the storm, right? That's a very reachable goal. It may be challenging, but it's a very reachable goal. And then which steps require new learnings or risks? So you want to identify those. And then you can create your internally located action plan. So you have your goals, you have your steps to get there, you know which ones are reachable, you know where you have to learn something new. So you might have to sign up for a course, or you might have to learn about some new meditation skills. You might have to learn about the rules in your state, about opening a practice. And then every single day you check something off your list, and you're closer and closer to your goal. And as you were saying, some of our goals are just external goals. They're ambitious goals that we have to present ourselves in the outside world. And some of them are internal goals, like being peaceful, being calm, being less anxious. And so some of our reachable goals, like meditating every day, become permanent reachable goals on a daily basis. That becomes part of our habits. And so I walk my dog for an hour and a half every day, and it keeps me sane. I get up at 6 in the morning and I go on a walk. If I don't do it, I don't feel as well as if I do it. So every single day that's on my list. It's part of what I do. And I feel that I've accomplished something when I'm finished doing that. If I don't do it, then I feel like, oh, I really should do it. It's not great that I didn't walk my dog. And my mind gets noisy. But there are days where I can't do it because I have to start work early or it's pouring rain out. And then I just take it off my list and I don't suffer that I didn't do it because it gets off my list. So you don't want these goals to be part of what you get externally located in. You don't want to set up goals and then hate yourself for the very plan that you created. You have to be really mindful of setting your goals, that they're reachable and that they are something you want to participate in, and then make sure every single day you look at these goals so that you can assess, is this a reachable goal today, or is it not for some other reason, something else happened? So that's how you use these tools on a day-to-day basis, and you can use them and apply them to everything in that you're trying to do in your life.
I love it. Let's, if you could unshare your screen, I'm going to pop on and let's say, how do I, can't show myself for some reason. Oh, there we go. Hello.
Hello.
That was extremely helpful. I'm not sure what you guys thought, but I learned a lot. There's lots of little tidbits about DBT in here.
Yeah.
Right, because I'm a DBT skills therapist, so I heard non-judgmental stance, sticking to your values and interpersonal effectiveness, mindfulness, radical acceptance, and I really love that. And I like how simple and easy it is to sort of understand it, right? Like if I'm externally located, I'm looking around in the outside world for my value, my worth, comparing myself, am I okay, right? But if it's coming from the inside out, I can feel good about myself. I can really move forward towards my goals. I don't get held up or held back by the noise in my head or the optics, the image. Really very interesting. Is there a
Yeah.
book or some information that you can share with us, Jamie, that we
Um,
can maybe look further into this whole theory and concept and action plan?
Sadly, there is not because
Interesting.
it's a concept that hasn't really been picked up. I discovered it accidentally, but I am writing a book about it, so that's on my goal
Yes,
list.
good for you. I'm going to be the first one on your list, your prepay list.
Thank
It's
you. Thank you.
wonderful.
So that I would actually appreciate anyone's feedback if you have my email address, which you might, about whether you felt this was helpful. If you think, oh, I didn't, these are things I didn't understand. I would love that kind of feedback from you guys as well. Yeah.
Well, I mean, I thought it was really simple and easy to understand. And I love what you said about the scrambled vision. I wrote down what you said, be clear and have a profound vision so that you can have a profound result.
Right.
I
Because
love
that's
that.
what happens, right?
Love that. Yeah. So I really want to thank you, Jamie. This was super helpful, very interesting. You clearly are a master of this topic.
Well,
So
thank you.
it's really been a joy to learn from you today. So I want to thank you. I honor you for sharing
Thank
the time with us today.
I'd also like to thank you for the opportunity to share it because I feel it's such a helpful tool that I'd love people to know it
Yeah.
so that they have something that they can help themselves with very easily. So thank you very much, and for
I'm not
everyone who
sure if you
attended.
can see the chat, but people are saying it's excellent, helpful, useful. You're a great presenter. Excellent,
Oh, thank you.
excellent. So yes, thank you, everyone. Stay well.
Thank you. Thank you very much.
Bye.
Bye-bye.